Ready to dive into some serious leadership talk.
Always up for that.
We're going deep into ADP 622 today.
The Army's doctrine on leadership sounds intense.
Intense, sure, but we're here to break it down, make it practical, useful for leaders at all levels.
I like it. Cut through the jargon and get to the good stuff.
Exactly. And one of the first things that struck me about this doctrine is it's not just about how to lead, it's about the Army's very purpose.
Absolutely. It lays the groundwork. Why does the Army even exist? What makes it tick?
Right. ADP 622 reminds us it's about being ready to fight and win. Large-scale combat operations, and not just as a solo act, but as part of a joint force.
Big leagues.
Exactly. Those complex fights that demand, well, everything, and that commitment to being that decisive force, the one that answers the nation's call.
It goes way back, doesn't it?
All the way back. I mean, think about those lines from Emerson's Conquered Hymn. The embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard round the world.
Powerful imagery.
It connects those early patriots to the core of what the Army represents, even today. That shared purpose, passed down, evolving.
And the Army's definitely had to evolve, from those ragtag militias to the force we know today.
Hugely. Speaking of evolution, that brings us to another key idea, the Army as a profession.
Not just a job, right?
Not at all. ADP 622 is clear about that. It's about upholding an oath, a trust. There are ethical implications, serious responsibilities that come with wearing the uniform.
It's about living those Army values every single day. Loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. These aren't just words on a poster at the DMV.
You're telling me those values, they're the compass, especially when things get chaotic, right?
Especially then. I remember this one firefight. It was during the surge in Iraq. Things were really heating up. And
You were right there in the thick of it.
yeah, we were pinned down by enemy fire, heavy stuff. Our platoon leader, I remember he was just a young lieutenant at the time, but man, he kept us cool.
Under that kind of pressure, that's incredible.
It was remarkable. He rallied us, directed fire support, even risked his own life to drag a wounded soldier to safety. Talk about selfless service. Talk about personal courage. He embodied those Army values in that moment.
Wow, I can only imagine. It's one thing to read about those values, but to see them in action like that?
There's no substitute for real-world experience, that's for sure. And what's really interesting is how the lieutenant's actions, they had this ripple effect.
Meaning?
Well, it wasn't just about saving that one soldier. It was the example he set for the entire platoon. Trust was built, morale went up. We were a more effective unit because of what he did that day. That's leadership in action. You can't bottle that stuff.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about the WHY, the Army's purpose, those core values. What about the HRW, ADP 622? It gets into the nitty-gritty of what it actually means to lead in the Army, right?
Exactly. It doesn't beat around the bush. It lays out a clear definition, influencing people by providing purpose, direction, and motivation.
So it's not just about barking orders then?
No, not at all. It's about empowering your soldiers, giving them the tools they need, the trust they need to achieve the mission. And that's where Mission Command comes in.
Ah, Mission Command music to an Army leader's ears.
Right. It's about clear communication, intent, but also giving your people the freedom to make decisions on the ground because you trust their judgment.
Makes sense, especially when you think about how complex and fast-paced the modern battlefield has become.
Exactly. A leader can't be everywhere, making every call, especially with the technology and tactics we have today.
You've got to be able to delegate, to trust your team.
Exactly. And the source even talks about the different ways to motivate. Sometimes a direct order is needed, no two ways about it, but other times, setting that powerful example like that lieutenant in the firefight, it sticks with people.
It's knowing your people, adapting your approach, which I think leads us nicely to the Army Leadership Requirements Model. The BEKNOW DO framework.
Yes, the BEKNOW DO.
Yeah.
If you ask me, it's the Army's blueprint for creating effective leaders.
A solid blueprint.
It breaks it all down. Attributes, competencies, what you bring to the table, and what you learn to do.
You could have all the charisma in the world, the character, but without the knowledge and the skills, you're not going to be effective.
You got it. It's nature AE, nurture, the BE, those attributes. That's your character, your presence, your intellect, the foundational stuff.
The building blocks.
Then you got the competencies, leading, developing, achieving. You inspire action, you build your team up, and you get the job done.
Simple, but it covers a lot.
It does. And it applies at every level, from a squad leader all the way up to a general. Where things get really interesting, though, is when we talk about the dynamics of leadership. How the leader, the lead, and the situation all play together.
Because it's never cut and dry, is it?
Never. A platoon sergeant leading a patrol is going to approach things a lot differently than a general briefing at the Pentagon.
Different contexts, different approaches.
Exactly. And ADP 622, it stresses the importance of knowing your team, their experience level, their competence, their commitment. A team of seasoned vets might need a lighter touch than a group of fresh recruits.
Reading the room, basically. But also, and I think this is important, remembering that every leader is also a follower at some point.
Oh, that's a critical point. Understanding how to take initiative, how to anticipate your leader's needs, that's invaluable.
Being a good wingman. Okay, so we've got the leader, the lead, and then there's the situation, that third piece of the puzzle.
Always a wild card, right?
Yeah.
And ADP 622, it gives this great example of the story of the reluctant machine gunner in Iraq. It highlights how a leader sometimes has to make a judgment call, adapt their approach based on the individual and the circumstances.
Just stability is key.
Absolutely. No two situations are identical.
Now, within all of this, the BE, KNOW, DO, the dynamics, ADP 622 also recognizes these distinct but intertwined roles in the Army officers, non-commissioned officers, and DA civilians. Each one brings something unique to the table.
They do. And while their responsibilities might differ, that commitment to the mission, to those Army values, it's something they all share.
It's a common thread. Shall we start with officers? When you think of their role, what comes to mind?
Well, they're the ones ultimately responsible, right? For everything, the strategy, the resources, the lives of their soldiers.
The buck stops there.
It does. ADP 622 is very clear about the weight of an officer's commission. It's a special trust. And it's not just about leading in combat. It's managing resources, developing policy, all while navigating the complexities of military bureaucracy.
It's a heavy load.
It is. And we can't forget about the warrant officers either, those technical wizards.
Ah, yes, the warrant officers, the gurus.
The ones who bridge that gap between theory and practice, making sure everything actually works. They're vital.
They've often got years of hands-on experience in their fields, the go-to experts. Okay, moving on to, as they're often called, the backbone of the Army, the non-commissioned officers, the NCOs.
Yep.
What comes to mind when you think about their role?
Mentorship is huge. They're the trainers, the mentors, shaping the next generation of soldiers. Discipline, standards, values, they embody it all.
They're the ones who take those fresh recruits and turn them into soldiers and then into leaders themselves. It's impressive.
It really is. ADP 622, it emphasizes their role as trainers, mentors, communicators, advisors, that crucial link between the officers giving the orders and the soldiers carrying them out.
They're the ones on the ground in the trenches, you know.
Absolutely. They've walked a mile in those boots, and that experience, it gives them a certain credibility. Soldiers, they see that. They respect that.
It's that earned respect. And you know, ADP 622, it even tells this powerful story about First Sergeant Conrad Schmidt.
Oh, I know that one during the Civil War, right?
Yeah, amidst all the chaos of battle, he shielded his commander from enemy fire, risked his own life. That kind of selfless courage, it's remarkable.
The definition of going above and beyond. And that spirit is alive and well in the NCO Corps today. They look out for their soldiers, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about officers, NCOs. Let's not forget about the DA civilians. They're vital to the Army's success, too.
Oh, they're essential, but often overlooked. I'm glad we're giving them their due here.
ADP 622 is clear about their value, highlighting their expertise, the institutional knowledge they bring, especially important in an organization where military personnel are constantly rotating in and out, right?
Huge, that continuity. They provide that stable foundation.
Keeping the gears turning behind the scenes.
Exactly. Unsung heroes, for sure.
Couldn't have put it better myself. So as we wrap up our deep dive into ADP 622, it's clear Army leadership, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal.
No, it's complex, lots of moving parts.
But at its core, it's about those fundamental principles: character, competence, a deep commitment to serving something larger than yourself.
And that goes for everyone, officer, enlisted, civilian. We all have a role to play in the Army's success.
And ultimately, that's what leadership is all about, isn't it? Inspiring others, pushing them to be better, to come together and achieve something great.
Well said. And as you continue on your own journey, because that's what it is, a journey.
Always learning, always growing.
Exactly. Find those mentors who challenge you. Ask the tough questions and never stop pushing yourself to be a better leader.
Because that's the standard, right? To lead with courage, with conviction, and to live by those Army values every single day.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, folks, this has been a deep dive into ADP 622. We hope you've gained some valuable insights, some food for thought to help you on your own leadership journey. Until next time.